Welcome back to another episode driven by cause. This episode is brought to you by Arreva and MaestroSoft, the thought leaders behind the industry's only completely integrated and fully automated cloud-based software for digital fundraising, donor relationship management, healthcare hospitality, and auction software. I'm joined by my awesome co-host, Jay Fiske. How are you today, Jay?
I am, as always, excited to meet our guest, and today, guests plural.
Well, you're right. I am excited too, Jay. Today, it is going to be a great episode because we have two guests today. They are the co-authors of the best-selling Generation Impact, How Next-Gen Donors Are Revolutionizing Giving, which was named winner of the AFP Skystone Partners Prize for Research on Fundraising and Philanthropy. Today, Michael is part of the Johnson Center serving as the Frey Foundation Chair for Family Philanthropy, the world's first endowed chair for family philanthropy, and Sharna serves as the founder and vice president of 2164, a nonprofit practice serving next-gen and multi-generational philanthropic families. Sharna has also been named to the New York Business Journal's Women of Influence list. Between the two of them, they have written numerous publications, such as in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Forbes, Chronicle of Philanthropy, Stanford Social Innovation Review, and the Huffington Post, just to name a few. Please join me in welcoming Sharna Goldseker and Michael Moody.
It's great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We're so happy you both could be here with us today. Can you share with our listeners some information about yourselves? Tell us how you both got started in the nonprofit industry.
Go ahead, Sharna.
So thanks for having us today. It's great to be here with you both, and always fun to get to share the stage with my co-author and Michael. I come to this work wearing two hats, a personal one and a professional one. So my grandpa, along with his brother, immigrated to the United States in the early 1900s, and my grandpa opened a little grocery store down by the wharf in Baltimore, Maryland, where I'm from, and his brother started to pool some money together and buy row houses. If you've ever taken the train, Amtrak train down the Northeast Corridor, you've probably seen those outside of the window of the train. The real estate business did a little bit better, and everyone in the family moved in that direction, including my father. And when his uncle, my great uncle, passed away, he hadn't married, he didn't have children of his own. And my father discovered when the will was read, which is not how we recommend successful succession conversations going, of course, but he discovered he was to set up a charitable foundation in his uncle's honor with his uncle's estate. And so that was really the genesis story of philanthropy in our family. And this happened the year before I was born. So I was really raised as my dad was learning himself how to steward a foundation and to do that responsibly and make an impact in the community in which we live. So I learned a lot of important lessons along the way. I'm happy to share some of them as we speak. But along the way, I also met a lot of other next gen who were trying to earn the right to that legacy and learn their role in philanthropy, and hence my career in family philanthropy began.
So I grew up mostly with a single mother, and faced was very familiar with hardship, both for our family, but especially for other members of my immediate family, and knew what it was. A way I've heard it described recently is everybody in the family knew when payday was. And that's sort of the mentality. And so when I went to college, which was not necessarily a given growing up, when I went to college, I really wanted to use that experience to then go out and change the world, right? So it was late 80s, and I feel like I was going to, work in nonprofits and change the world in some way, but I didn't really know what that was going to be like. And I was lucky enough to have gone to and I got really involved in that in college. And so I was set up for doing that. And I was lucky enough to go to a university, Indiana University, that had recently just set up a new center on philanthropy started in 88, but I graduated in 89. And so it eventually became the world-class institute for the study and teaching of philanthropy that is there now, as a Lilly Family School. And I was one of the very first employees of that as a recent college graduate. And that's really what set me on the path to what I do now, which is trying to help improve the understanding and practice of philanthropy, speaking broadly, writ large philanthropy in all of its different forms. And I had a mentor who was the sort of founding director of that, named Robert Payton, who really helped me see that my role could be in looking at philanthropy as it plays a role in our society, and helping people understand that through both research and other things I do to bridge research and practice. So that's essentially the mission that we decided on for me when I was 21 is still my mission today at 55. So
wow. Well, we're thrilled to have you both on our podcast today, and thank you both for taking the time to join us. And the two of you are the authors of the groundbreaking book Generation Impact: How Next Gen Donors Are Revolutionizing Giving. It offers a rare profile of the new face of philanthropy, the Gen X and millennial philanthropists. A little hard for me to say, but I know you know what I'm talking about. So what can you tell us about how they're revolutionizing philanthropy and how they're changing the philanthropic landscape?
So Michael was just talking about his role as the Fry Chair of Family Philanthropy. And as he was coming into that role, he and I connected at a Council and Foundations conference, actually in Philadelphia. And we were starting to talk about the groundbreaking research that he would have the opportunity to do in that role. And I was about 10 years into my career at 21, 64. 21, you come of age. 64, you typically start to think about your legacy in this country. And so I was doing all this next generation work and starting to consult with the families of young people because they too wanted to learn how to best engage their next gen in philanthropy. And so we put our heads together and we said, look, we're seeing this anecdotally in the field. We're seeing all these major institutions hearing from their members that concern about the next gen carrying on the significance of philanthropy is number one in their member surveys. And so how can we move past the anecdotal experience we have and do some solid research? And so with Michael's university research base, we were able to field a national survey and do in-depth interviews and have done additional surveys over the years, but really come to understand how those Gen X and millennial donors approach giving. And so, one, we realized that they have the potential to have an outsized impact on philanthropy, first because of the resources that they have at their disposal. $59 trillion is in process of being transferred to those post-baby boom generations between now and 2061, I think is the estimate, and about half of that to go philanthropically in bequests or during lifetime giving, according to Boston College. And we know that young people are earning great amounts of wealth, whether on Wall Street or in the gold rush of Silicon Valley, and at earlier stages than ever before. And then we realized that it's not just about the numbers, it's about the fact that people are living longer and not wanting to wait to, kind of traditionally retire into philanthropic leisure, where, we used to hear people would sort of be in their accumulation stage, and then when they had late adulthood retirement could be philanthropic. And instead, younger generations were saying, hang on, why wait? We have resources. There are great needs in the world to be addressed. It's imperative that we get involved now. And I guess lastly, I would say, Michael, and then I would turn it over to you for more of our findings, but they really looked at the best solutions that could address problems in the world, be it in the for-profit and nonprofit sector. And so started to say, how can we revolutionize philanthropy in a way that's going to enable us to make social change that's needed?
Okay.
We had great opportunity to capture that and to share that in first person stories in a way that hadn't been done in the field before, and hopefully has benefited all kinds of advisors, nonprofit professionals, and next gen donors and their families as well. So it's been a great opportunity for us. I feel very grateful for the opportunity we've had to do this research and work over the years.
Can you share what you believe is the most important aspect, I guess, of for the next generation of donors in deciding what is going to make them decide how to make a major gift? What's playing in their brain?
Yeah, well, I would say, the simple answer, it's in the title of our book, is one word: impact.
Okay.
They are, and we say it in the book, they are obsessed with impact. And it's not as though previous generations didn't care about impact. It's that this generation really wants to be the generation that makes the biggest impact, that really moves the needle on those issues that they've seen, I mean, in some cases, their parents and grandparents working on, or other older generations of donors, and especially major donors trying to do great things about public education, or healthcare, or the environment, or whatever. And this generation says, we're proud of that. We think that was a good effort, but we want to do it in a way that really changes things. And we want to see that change, that impact. We want to see how the difference that our investments and of a range of our assets, not just our treasure, but our time, our talent, and we added in the book a fourth T of ties, all of the assets that we have to give. They want to see how those make a difference. So they want to give to many similar causes as other major givers, but what really matters for them when they give is finding those places where their gift is going to really make an impact. So the old standard, we were going to entice donors by putting up a big thermometer on the lawn for our fundraising campaign, and then the next line on the thermometer is when you do a big gift. They don't want to be the next line on the thermometer. They want to know, what is reaching that top of that thermometer going to do for the kids in my community, or for cleaning the air, or climate change, or whatever it is. And so that's what they think about the most. And then, a lot of the other findings in the book are really about how they want to go about doing that. What do they think about as good philanthropy from their perspective? And it definitely involves giving all of their assets, and being very hands-on, giving their time and their talent, as well as working with peers. It certainly involves people, trying to do innovation, trying to take risks. We had somebody in the book, Daniel Laurie, who started the Tipping Point community in the Bay Area, who said, we can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results. So they want to try new things, and they're willing to try whatever, if it's potentially going to lead to that one thing they want, which is ultimately impact. So there's a lot of that has a lot of implications for the field. But we heard very clear from them that they want to give in new ways, and they want to do so because they think it could lead to greater impact.
What I'm hearing is they want to move a bigger needle. They want to see a bigger result rather than a series of smaller local results.
And to destroy the metaphor even further, they want to grab the needle themselves and help move it, right? Not just give the money to other people and have those people move it. They want to be there when the needle moves and give advice on where the needle's going to go.
Love it.
Yeah, Michael, that really is, the focus is really great. And now Millennials and Gen-Xers and other generations are due to inherit some $59 trillion by 2061. And it isn't anticipated that nearly half will go to charitable causes. However, they demand more engagement from organizations, like you were saying. What are some of the unique communications and engagement strategies that nonprofits can use to reach these new generations?
So one finding of our research was that Next Gen said, I may be approached to do a million things, come to a lot of events, join committees, but really I want to go all in on a couple of things and apply my time, talent, treasure, and we added a fourth T to that age-old maxim, ties, to a couple of organizations or causes that I care most about. So we often hear from nonprofits, I reached out to them, I never heard from them. And we hear, look, we're approached for a lot of things at the same time. We're in a developmental stage of our lives where we're building our careers and our families. So we have a lot of competing demands. It doesn't mean I'm not interested. It just means I'm really going to prioritize a few things so I could go more deeply and, as Michael said, affect change with those organizations, to really partner with them. So, in some ways, I guess the first suggestion to nonprofits is just to appreciate the conditions, the perspective, the generational personality that they're approaching, and not to assume when they don't hear that they're not interested, but to understand they have a lot going on in their lives. Two, we heard a Next Gen donor whom we interviewed, Emily Davis, said to us, don't think about them as an ATM. You have to remember they're humans, they're people with values and interests of their own. So, rather than just soliciting them, try to get to know them, build a relationship, Think about it as courting, where that you might have, a long-term relationship. These are young people. The upside of that is that they could be your donors for a very long time if you develop a meaningful partnership. And I say partnership in particular because we really saw that Next Gen want to be hands-on. It doesn't mean, you need to make them the leader of your organization as a young donor, but, they're willing to give of their time. They're willing to give of their talent. We heard a lot of Next Gen say, I have skills. Like one woman I'll never forget said, if a nonprofit makes me pick the napkin colors at the gala again, I'll scream, right? And it was usually women who are asked to do that. And she said, I'm an attorney. And another said, I'm in finance. Another said, I'm a social worker. Like, how can I really use my skills to meet the needs that the nonprofit may have? And maybe I'll let Michael talk more about treasure and ties, but I think getting to know the people and not just seeing them as like one of the many millennials that you might cultivate makes them feel like they're individuals in their own right and not just the child of, or the ATM, as Emily puts it, to be the next donor in your organization, but to be a partner over time.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
And I guess I would just add that there is this assumption that's in the field that if you want to reach millennials or now Gen Zers, that you have to use social media and that's how they want to be involved, and that you need to retool your communication strategies for your fundraising, even for major donor fundraising, to be more social media focused. And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, yes, having robust social media is going to be good for them, but especially when they're going to make bigger commitments and they want to think about this long-term partnership that Sharna was just talking about. They want to be hands-on. They want to be there having meetings with the program staff and the executive director of the organization about how are we going to meet these result benchmarks we talked about, or maybe let's put me in charge of a task force to go out and figure out some new program idea that you may need to reach a new population. And so I think the fundraising strategies and the communication strategies and engagements are all about finding ways to make them feel deeply engaged, as we said, I'll go all in with the organization. And that may feel a little uncomfortable, giving some control over certain things over to donors. But that's what's going to build that relationship that they want to have, that then could be, again, they're going to have more treasure to give than any other generation in the past. And so if they become big donors to the organization that feel really connected, they're going to be the biggest donors you ever had.
Oh. So, Michael, you work with the Johnson Center at the Fry Foundation as Fry Foundation chair for family philanthropy. Now, this is the world's first endowed chair for family philanthropy. And for our listeners who may not know, can you elaborate on what is family philanthropy? Furthermore, why is it important for nonprofit organizations today? Can you help us out there a little bit?
Yeah, so the challenge, of course, is that there is no legal or shared definition of what family philanthropy is. There's not even, many people don't realize that we hear about family foundations, which are very prominent, but there's no actual legal. That's not a legal category. There's no hard and fast rule, even within the field and the people who work in the field. On what exactly defines the line between whether you're a family foundation or not a family foundation. So I tend to take a very broad view of it. And that is that I also want to think about family philanthropy as not just family foundations, but other ways of giving by families and through families that are doing good, that aren't just about people who have the resources to create a foundation. So family philanthropy is really about sort of a collective act of giving together and in the name of your family. And so it can go all the way from, the Gates Foundation is a family foundation. Let's not forget, it's not just family foundations. Most of them are small. The vast majority are small. But the biggest one ever is a family foundation, and or the multi-generational giving families like the Rockefellers. That's family philanthropy for sure. But it also means, volunteering with your spouse and your kids for their soccer tournament, or making a choice in the holiday time about where you want to do some small checkbook giving at the end of the year for your family, and you do that around the kitchen table, and everything in between. So it's an act of families working together in some way, and that can be giving money, that can be serving, volunteering together, in ways that fit with or try to advance the family's values. that in many cases sort of becomes and extends a family legacy. Those are all important elements of family philanthropy, but I tend to take a very broad view of it. And the reason it's important is because the vast majority of philanthropy is family philanthropy. People, who follow the statistics, right, will know that when you actually look at the amount of giving that's done every year, the vast majority of that comes from individuals or through bequests and other ways in which it's not foundations or corporations, even though they get most of the news. And sure, of course, some of those foundations are family foundations also. But there's just lots and lots of small family-based acts of charitable giving and philanthropic giving. And they are very often, for most nonprofits, the vast majority of all your annual donors. Those are family philanthropists. And so family philanthropists matter. An organization that works in this field.
Well, thank you for that. After decades of experience in this industry, what challenges or changes do you see facing nonprofits down the road?
I'll say a couple, and then I see if Sharna has some. But the biggest one I think was relevant from our book is we've talked about it a little bit today, and that is just how much adaptation needs to happen in the nonprofit and fundraising space to meet the great potential and opportunity of the next generation donors. They really want to engage in different ways, as we've talked about, and that's going to require fundraisers and nonprofits to change how they think about major donor fundraising and engagement and cultivation. The old ways won't really work as well with this next generation, and they're gonna ask more of your time. They are a bit more work, but again, the payoff is that they could be the biggest donors you've ever had. So that sort of retooling of the practice and techniques of fundraising in order to meet the next generation of donors, I think is a huge challenge for the field of nonprofits. And the other one I'll mention is that we know from not just surveys and research like we did on major donors in the next generation, but also across the next generations, and we see it already emerging with Gen Z. There is this sense that if you ask a young person how they want to do good in the world, how do they want to live their values for social change, the idea of giving a amount of money to a traditional 501c3 charity is not at the top of the list, as it might have been for previous generations. Up there, more at the top of the list are things like taking a job and working in a profession that has a double or triple bottom line, being a socially conscious consumer, and being engaged in political movements or organizing for social change activities or social justice movements. So there are a lot of things that they see as doing good. And this is, again, when I say they, a whole range of the next generation, especially, don't fit our traditional categories or the way we often think about 501c3 fundraisers. And so those who are in those roles in nonprofits, who are trying to get those very next gen folks to give to their organization, have to think about how they can kind of innovate and be more creative in how they approach them and how they partner with others in the community doing other things, so that they can appeal to that. But I don't think those trends are going away, and it's a big challenge for nonprofits. We've already seen it in terms of the decline in what we think of as ordinary middle-class household giving is going down. And I think that's part of it. It's not that people are apathetic or don't want to contribute to charity. It's that they've got all sorts of other outlets for doing good in the world. And that's a big challenge for the nonprofit world overall.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Sharna, as the founder and vice president of 2164, can you share with our listeners why you founded this organization and what you hope to achieve for your clients?
So thinking back, we're actually celebrating our 20th anniversary next year, and it's amazing to appreciate the passage of time. But I had the good fortune of working for a philanthropic family, the Bronfmans, and specifically Andrea and Charles Bronfman Philanthropies, and they were interested in supporting next gen around the globe on a number of issues, including education and heritage and crossing lines of difference. And they said, we have a lot of peers who are supporting these next gen initiatives. What about the next gen of donors? Because as the needs evolve, you also need peers of theirs who will agree to fund the evolving needs, right? My generation sees things one way. I know from my own children, they see the world differently. And, the next generation will need its philanthropists to respond to the changing needs too. And so it was with that motivation in mind that they had an operating foundation, which is a little bit of a different category than most. So there are private foundations that give gifts to nonprofits, and there are operating foundations that, in addition to making grants, can also fund their own programs. And so I was encouraged to start 2164 as an operating project of the foundation to be able to support the growth of next generation donors, and did a lot of education in that space. Imagine young people saying, I'm in my 20s, I'm trying to figure out what to major in college and what my career will be, and what my partnership, and if I will have children, and where I'll live in the world, and in the middle of all that, parents calling and saying, hey, by the way, I want you to join the board of our $500 million foundation, come home for a family meeting. So we were trying to really address people who, I don't know if that evokes empathy, and a lot of people, most would say like, oh, I'm sorry you have that challenge, but there are people who are stepping into this opportunity and responsibility of stewardship of dollars that they didn't earn, that they're trying to figure out who they are in the world, and at the same time figure out their philanthropic identity and role in stewardship. And that's a complicated challenge if you have the humility to want to do it well. And we met a lot of really earnest next gen who said, I need the education, I need the coaching, I need the tools. And so that was the motivation behind building out 2164. And pretty quickly, families would call and say, we're trying to add our next gen to the board, come help us do this well. And then professional advisors started to say, can you train us and coach us in your methodology and tools? And we were excited to do that. So we incubated out of the Bronfman Philanthropies as it spent down, and are an independent consulting practice, and in a way still maintain our mission of next generation engagement in philanthropy, and then multi-generational advising and professional training. And I think maybe the last thing I would add, if I could, is just, as Michael said, and as you intimated in your questions, the field evolves, so one of the things we've done in the last few years is to notice that the professional advisor community we're training are mostly have identified as white individuals, and what could we do to take responsibility as one of the largest professional development trainers in the field to say, how do we bring in people of color to be philanthropic advisors? And so we started with the funding of Sharna and Joyce and Irving Goldman Family Foundation and others to start certified advisors of color training and mentorship programs. So I've been really excited to work with new philanthropic advisors in the space and see that come to fruition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you both amazing background, and we've talked a lot about your work. And I don't know which one of the two of you, Sharna or Michael, want to go first on this, but we'd be curious to know, what is something about the two of you separately that might surprise our audience? What in your personal lives might we be curious to find out?
You first.
I lose. Okay. So mine's going to be very short, and it requires a cultural reference, which is a moment in the first Matrix film when Neo is getting downloaded into his brain, and he all of a sudden realizes, I know Kung Fu. So that's what you would know about. I know Kung Fu. Only mine was not through a brain download. It was many years of practice.
Gotcha. Oh, that. Now, see, people would not have guessed that about you. What about you?
I was going to go a totally different direction, and now I'm feeling like I'm too serious. So, I was going to say, most people think, like, with all the work on family dynamics and board governance that I do, I must have like a million siblings running around my house that I've learned to negotiate with. I'm actually an only child. So that is what most people don't know. Yeah. And I just am really good sitting with silence and helping to be comfortable with other people's dynamics as I try to help them sort through them. So
those are both great.
And I'm an only child. Those are our revelations today.
Thanks for sharing that personal insight to the two of you. Thank you. And Michael, I'll stay away from you, and I don't want to get on your wrong side of you. I don't want to experience any of your kung fu from the wrong side of the table.
One of the principles, though, is that kung fu is there so that you never have to use it.
I love it.
Exactly.
Very Jedi of you.
We always like to finish our show by asking each of you one question. What is something that we didn't ask you that you wish we had?
There's a whole section of the book and a whole section of what we've talked about that I think really is relevant, especially for nonprofits and fundraisers, which is, how the next generation thinks about the previous generations and what to do if you're a fundraiser thinking about this new world that you're coming into, this big challenge we've been talking about. When most of your donors, especially your biggest donors, are going to continue for a little while to be, baby boomers and maybe older Gen Xers. I think a lot of people mistake the next generation for wanting to leave the old generation behind and put their own stamp on things and take the baton and run with the roles in the field, the leadership in the field, the major gift activity in the field, and not do that with older generations. Like, they've had their time and we want to move on. And that's not what we found the next generation wants to do. They're very eager to be engaged in multi-generational giving. They're very eager to learn from older generations, as long as they are taken seriously also as the next generation that has expertise, that has energy. And so I think that that is in some ways positive news for the nonprofits and fundraisers, is that it's not an either or choice, that you have to either spend time working with your older donors or start retooling for the new donors. There's a way of doing both. And in fact, both generations want to do both. The older generation wants to be involved with the next generation and vice versa. So I think that's an element of this we haven't really talked about, but it's super important.
Yeah.
For me, maybe the question is, what do I do after I listen to this podcast? What's my own action to take? And so, I think about when my Gen Z children come home from school and agilely, manage their Google Classrooms and their video games and all the technology that makes me feel very old. I get a little intimidated. And so I can imagine that fundraisers and nonprofit professionals might feel intimidated to try to figure out how to navigate relationship building with younger generations. And so maybe my offering would be, write down like a handful, even if they're your own nieces and nephews or kids who live in the neighborhood or, a close friend's children, and like start to practice and just flex the muscle of having coffee with, or spilling tea, as the Gen Z like to say, with the younger generations, to practice what that relationship development and dialogue is about. And I think it will kind of demystify the experience of it and realize that they're just people too. They want to have conversations about values and what's keeping them up at night and how they too can have a meaningful, purpose-driven life, just like you do, I'm sure. So that would be my suggestion. Just go start now and enjoy those conversations.
Both of you just kind of opened the door to technology there, and I just want to pipe in real quick. One of the things I see a lot with auction committees is the concern over trying to integrate technology into their galas, because they are dealing with the baby boomers and so forth, and they're thinking, oh no, we couldn't possibly go to mobile bidding and have people bid on a cell phone, because a lot of our supporters are older, and they just don't get that. And, the younger people would totally gravitate to that and it wouldn't be a problem, but we have to be we have to be fair to and recognize our older attendees at our event. And I will just ask them, I'll say, well, how do you think those baby boomers communicate with their grandkids?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they send text back and forth to their grandkids. They're not going to forget how to use their cell phone just because they attended your gala. So there is that layering. You got to be aware of that layering, but there's probably more in common than I think we probably give the different layers of generations credit for. So
I think that's totally right, Jay. And, to echo something that Michael was saying too, it could be in parallel. So I recently attended an event where they both had the analog version of please, write your check and put it in the bucket in the middle of the table. And they had on the screen the text number where you could text your gift, and that you had both options. And as people live longer and we have multiple generations in the same space at the same time. I think you're right. We are already confronting that in our families and in our lives, and so too in the nonprofit world.
And it's also an opportunity for intergenerational sort of partnerships around giving. I mean, that younger generations would love if they could be the person actually making the donation using the technology that grandma and grandpa are going to pay for, and that they want to donate, and showing them how to do that. I mean, that kind of tech. It gets old all the time if you're constantly asked to fix your grandma or your mother's printer every time you come by. But it is a really it's a great connector between generations, or potentially a great connector between generations. And if your fundraising event can allow them to have that connection, that's another great value add you bring to the family.
Yeah. And by the way, Michael, that happens with my kids and my mom every single Sunday. So with that, Michael and Sharna, this was great. And we'll be right back after this.
We are a team that has had an enduring influence on the nonprofit industry for more than 3 decades. We pride ourselves on developing and delivering technology with a purpose, software born of a genuine understanding and passion for cause. We are relentlessly dedicated to our client success. We are with our clients for good. We are Arreva, tech with purpose, driven by cause. Arreva is the trusted advisor and market leader of fundraising, donor relationship management, and auction software and services. Exceed further, our evolutionary all-in-one digital fundraising and donor relationship management software is helping nonprofits worldwide further their mission, transform fundraising, and cultivate relationships with donors and constituents. Our Maestro Auction virtual, live, and silent auction software, text-to-bid, virtual and mobile bidding software, and text-to-fund, text-based donation software are helping nonprofits raise billions of dollars through thousands of virtual fundraising events, charity auctions, and galas. Visit Arreva.com and reach out today and see how Arreva can help your nonprofit organization go further.
Welcome back, everyone. All right, we're going into our next segment, Ask the Maestro. Jay, what question do you have from our audience today?
Well, David, we have an interesting question today. The first one comes from Jenny. She said I'd be interested in hearing from Michael and Sharna thoughts on this. This is something normally we would answer, but I think we want you to answer this instead. And that's, we're seeing that the average age of donors for our organization is boomers, followed by Gen X, but millennials and Gen Zs are philanthropic and giving, but in different ways. What do you think why do you think there's such a difference between these two groups? So who wants to tackle that?
I will say that if we know, my short version would be just wait. It won't be very long before your biggest donors are not just Gen Xers, but millennials, because we know that the resources are going to be there. We know that this wealth transfer is happening. It's historic amounts of money that are being passed on, both at the end of life for older generations and during their lifetimes. And the beneficiaries of that are Gen Xers and millennials and now Gen Z. And so there is going to be a lot more significant giving by those generations going forward. But again, that doesn't mean it's going to look in the same way. And so I think some of the patterns that she might be seeing with younger generations giving are going to continue even when they have more money to give. And I think that's what we can all expect, is that they're going to be giving in different ways, but they're going to become the biggest donors. We're already seeing this with some of the older Gen Xer donors are becoming the biggest donors of some organizations. And so I think it's happening more rapidly than many people realize.
Thanks for the question, Jenny. I think you probably articulated one that many nonprofit professionals are feeling. So I have 2 answers for you, right? One is from the literature. Sociologists like Neil Howe is writing about multiple generations having different events and conditions that inform them as they were growing up. And so the lens that they have on the nonprofit sector is informed by whether they, lived through different socioeconomic, political life events that change how they see the world, right? And how they experience things. So therefore, that's kind of the rationale, I think, behind why your boomers approach giving maybe by causes, because perhaps they grew up in a time where civil rights and women's rights and war or anti-war, right, were kind of coming to the fore. And so baby boomers often lead with, these are the causes that I care about, right? Whereas Gen Xers, and I'm proud to be one, grew up during Watergate and Iran-Contra and the downsizing of corporations our parents worked decades for, and the free love of Woodstock looked like the AIDS epidemic to our generation, and the war on drugs added crack to the list. Like, we're totally cynical about everything, and so bring lots of skepticism to our nonprofits, but we come by it naturally. So I hope you have some empathy for us. And I guess what I want to say is, to that end, like, how do you then apply that in practice? I just recently spoke at a university to board of governors asking the same questions you are. And right before I spoke on a panel with a Gen Xer and a millennial, the head of the fundraising committee was talking about the golf fundraiser that they were having, not far from where you live, David. And the millennial on the panel behind me got up and he said, I'm a graduate of your university. I'm a $100,000 giver. I'm never coming to that golf event. It's not for my generation. If you want to walk me around campus, show me what your needs are. I'm an entrepreneur. I'll be glad to see where your gaps are and to fund the next iteration of your X program. I'm ready. But I don't need to be on the golf course with you. I can do that with my friends. So it was just like a beautiful anecdote to illustrate the generational differences that we're talking about today. So I think the solution to that is ask them. Ask them how they want to be engaged, and ask them how they want to be involved. And they'll tell you, whether you want to hear it or not, they'll bring you ideas of how they can best play a role in your nonprofit.
I want to make a quick comment about the graduate who said, I'm $100,000 donor. I don't need to attend your golf tournament. I have to make a comment about that. That person is a great supporter, but they're not seeing the bigger vision. The reason for the golf tournament is not to get that $100,000. It's to get what I call OPM, other people's money. We want that $100,000 giver to buy a foursome and bring 3 other people that can equally give money. We're gonna get his money anyway. But no, the reason we want you to attend the golf tournament is not to get the money you're going to give us anyway. We want you to attend the golf tournament to help us spread the ask. We want to learn new people. We want to bring more people in to understand why we need the money. And that's what we're asking you to do, is to host a foursome or be a sponsor or something like that. That's why we need you at the golf tournament. That would have been my answer anyway.
I think it's a smart answer. And I think, we didn't talk about the ties part of our 4 Ts. Like, they're super networked, and they're super willing to look horizontally to their peers to bring them around the table. I just think you have to offer them something that they want to do in the first place, and then they'll bring it to their peers. And I don't know if the golf course is the hook for everyone. I think it's for some,
Yeah. So the bringing in other people is really attractive to them, especially they can, if they're really deeply engaged with the organization. It's the fact of bringing them in only for money that I think is less attractive. And, it's more, yes, we can do a foursome, but what we'd like to do is I get 3 of my friends or 10 of my friends and we tour campus together and we talk about stuff. And then we decide, okay, you have this gap. You need a new engineering program for something. And I've got people who I know how to do that. And let's we'll give the money, we'll help lead the task force. And, that's what they want to do. So they're really into getting other people involved in the causes that they care about, but they want to do it around their talents and their, not just around money.
So they can
Yeah.
And so they can see it, so my gift will go to that building and yours will go to this program. And here's where my, yeah.
Well, we usually end up answering the Ask the Maestro questions, and I am so glad this time around we had you answer those, because you gave a much better answer than I think David and I would have. So they were great answers. Thank you so much. And for those of you watching, tune in, Driven by Cause. Next episode, we'll have another opportunity for you to ask the maestro and have it answered right here, right, David?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jay. Michael and Sharna, it was a pleasure having you both with us today. It was such a treat. Thank you so much for all your insight and advice to all of our listeners.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
No, absolutely. And while we're at it, make sure you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Do not miss out on any of our Driven by causes. I also want to give a special thank you to our amazing sponsors, Arreva and MaestroSoft, for their support and allowing us to be here with you today. Thank you all for a fantastic session, and we really appreciate all the listeners, and we'll hope you join us next time on Driven by Cause. Make it a great day.